News Radio 700 WLW. I am Ken Broo. Proud to be with you on this glorious Saturday wherever you are. I hope you're healthy and doing well and not going completely crazy from the lockdown that's in effect for all of us by and large, some in more places than others. I can't even imagine what's going on this day in New York City and how difficult a fight it's been out there on the East Coast, but I know somebody who could fill us in on that. And also, if you've been furloughed or if you have been fired during the coronavirus outbreak, what are your legal rights? And how much is your employer held liable, or your former employer for that matter, held liable during these times? Let's welcome in attorney Jonathan Bell. He is a labor employment attorney and the founder of Bell Law Group. Bell Law Group represents individuals that are not being paid in accordance with the law. And Jonathan, welcome to 700 WLW. How are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm doing okay. Thanks a lot for having me. It's just, crazy times. Never expected this to happen during the course of my lifetime. But here we are and dealing with it as best as we can, looking at, small silver linings when we can, but never forgetting the fact that so many people are suffering and dying. So, just keep going and looking forward is my motto.
That's excellent advice. We out here in the Midwest are not as impacted by this as you are in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut area. Our deaths, our diagnosed cases are just a fraction of what's going on out there. If you could, can you just describe what it's like in New York, in the New York City area right now, which on this particular day would be teeming with people?
Yeah, so I'm in Long Island, which is in the suburbs. But speaking with friends, I mean, it's if you're lucky enough and you could leave the city, a lot of people have left. They've either gone to Connecticut or out in the Hamptons or looking to stay with family. For those who can't, it's very difficult. I mean, here, I live in a suburb. It's easy for me to just go for a ride and go for a walk. But some of my friends that are stuck in 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, they don't want to go out because you don't know who's going to be in the elevator or going down the stairs, and you're afraid to touch everything. I mean, obviously, in the city, it's one on top of the other, in a sense, and that's the lifestyle they chose to live, but it's very difficult under these circumstances. And unfortunately, it's come to a point where, although it hasn't affected a lot of people personally, whether it be a family member, everybody knows of at least somebody who's it's affected. So it reminds me of the days when I was living here during September 11th. Either you were personally affected or you know somebody close to you that was personally affected.
Yeah. That analogy I've heard a lot from people that are out there in that area. All right, let's talk about what's going on. As you well know, 17 million people, close to that number, have filed for unemployment over the last 3 weeks. We're told that unemployment could hit 32% over this. There's still 2 weeks to go in the magic number of everybody back to work on May 1st. I'm just wondering if someone has been furloughed, which is, I always thought was an interesting term. I used to only hear it in the Army. But if you've been furloughed, what are your rights in terms of filing for unemployment, getting any money out of your employer? Can you just give us a thumbnail as to people who have been furloughed? What are their rights now?
Sure. So furlough, the only difference between being furlough or the other term, which is either layoff or fired, is that the employer-employee relationship still exists. It's almost like a promise to the employee saying, hey, listen, we're slow now, but when things pick up, you certainly have a job. I'm going to reinstate you in the same position. Now, people who are furloughed, they're allowed to go and file and ultimately collect unemployment. So that makes it the same as, let's say, if you're laid off. But, if someone's furloughed, like if someone's fired, you pretty much have to pay them their sick time balances. If they're furloughed, the employee still has the option to utilize it. Mm-hmm. Also, if there's an employment contract with the furloughed employee, that still exists. So if there's something regarding non-competition where you can't work anywhere, if the person does decide to take a job somewhere else, they're going to have to voluntarily separate as opposed to being fired. But, the good news about unemployment, I'm sure you've heard, is, regardless of what state you're in, you file for unemployment, which is typically 40 to 45% of your earnings. They keep it that way because they want you to encourage you to get another job. Mm-hmm. But now, because there's no jobs available, the federal government is subsidizing that with an extra $600 a week up until the end of July. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty amazing. The only problem for employers is what's happening is that for people who make a lower wage, if they're being furloughed or even fired, they're going on unemployment, and technically with the $600 extra a week, they're making more money than they've made when you're employed. So you could imagine a situation with a small business when you have two employees, one you like, one's not as productive, you get rid of the other one, and the one that you like is like, hey, that guy's making more money than me right now, and I'm the one working.
Yeah, I no, totally get that. Now, you touched on it just briefly, but if you're furloughed, can you still draw benefits from your employer? In other words, medical benefits.
Yeah, so that's optional. So that's at the employer's option. So the employer can give you the COBRA notification, but a lot of them, to show goodwill, have been keeping them on the health insurance. Now, before the employer decides that, they have to contact the insurance company, because normally the insurance company has a requirement that if you're on health insurance, you have to be working full-time, at least 30 hours a week. Mm-hmm. But those laws or rules have been relaxed. So a lot of insurance companies that I've been dealing with in counseling small businesses, they're saying, no, it's okay. The employer could cover it, and then the employer has an option. Either the employer could continue to pay the amount that they're paying and just ask the employee to pay the difference, which they were always paying while they were employed, or the employer could cover the whole thing and just forgive it, or the employer could cover the whole thing, and then when the employee comes back, try to recoup those extra costs. So it's really, there's a lot of discretion as far as what the employer has the ability to do.
And I think when you get into discretion, I think that's where, the problems come in legally for the people that own these companies and the people that are the employer. I mean, there was we raised this question about a month ago before people were being told work at home or come into the office or whatever it may be. It's great to tell people to work at home, but you also have some people that have to be on the job, or we're told they have to be on the job for whatever reason, for whatever business it may be. How exposed are employers just on the off chance that the coronavirus pops up in a place of business? Would that not also lead to lawsuits from Joe, who said, well, you told me to come in, but you said it was okay for Ernie to work at home? I mean, the law, to me, at least as I read it, I'm not a lawyer, you are, is kind of murky there, is it not?
Yeah, so you bring up a valid point, but the fact of the matter is, if somebody, let's say they come into work and they get sick and they feel like they got sick at work and they want to sue their employer, firstly, to sue your employer, you have to go through the workers' compensation system. You can't start a direct lawsuit against your employer. So right there, they have a level of protection to go through the workers' comp proceeding, okay? And even in the workers' comp proceeding, the problem with this virus is that it's so contagious. For workers' comp to pick up, you have to prove causation. Mm-hmm. And it's so difficult to pinpoint and say, well, Joe got it over there. So that's a tough one. But I'll tell you where the lawsuits are going to come in. Number one, if you furlough employees, which again you still have the employee-employer relationship, mm-hmm. and you don't cut the employees' access to emails, or you're asking them to work, you're like, oh, you're getting paid through unemployment. Just do me a favor, do something here and there, and you have them work during that time, you can get sued. There is a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to having people work who are furloughed and who are unemployment. If you're an hourly employee and you do an hour of work, they got to be paid by the employer for that hour. If they're a salaried employer, they have to be paid for the entire day, even if they do 5 minutes of work. So that's certainly could be an issue. Then there's the federal laws that have come out as far as the 80 hours paid sick leave if you are an employer with 500 or less employees. So there's going to be people getting sick, and an instinct might be, you know what, we don't want you back, just go and go on unemployment. But no, they're supposed to be paid 80 hours. They're supposed to have the job kept available to them. So that's where I see some mistakes due to employers not doing the proper research or not getting the proper guidance as far as how to handle these types of incidences.
Well, that's why God created HR, right?
Yeah, but let me tell you something. I've been doing this a long time, and HR doesn't know. So HR, if they really know what they're doing, they should be in contact with a labor and employment lawyer to kind of walk them through, because things are changing every day. Because you have the paid sick leave. Now you have this extended FMLA, which is paid at 2/3 the salary. So you don't even have to be sick. If you have a child that's home because the school is closed, you're entitled to FMLA now for 12 weeks. The first 2 weeks are unpaid, and then the 10 weeks are paid at 2/3 the salary. So you have to really be in touch with a lawyer who knows what they're doing, and you got to be in touch regularly, because these things really change often.
Yeah. I want to ask you that again, Jonathan. The FMLA is the Family Medical Leave Act. And you're saying that this applies to someone whose child is home from school, because schools all over the place are closed. I see where the schools in your area are done for the year.
Yep.
So someone that has a child that's home from school, and the child needs, obviously, supervision. If the kid's 4 or 5 years old, you're not going to leave him in the house. If you do, you got other problems. So you're saying that an employee could file for the Family Medical Leave Act, first 2 weeks on them, but after that, 2/3 of what their total salary is. So, I mean, again, I don't know a lot of people realize that. This is good information, but that's the gist of that, correct?
Yeah, and just to add on it, so you're exactly right. The first 2 weeks are unpaid, and then you have 10 weeks paid at 2/3 your salary. However, then if you look at the other protection, which is the federal paid leave, that's 80 hours. And still, if you're at home watching your kid, that still covers you. So technically, you could go on paid family leave for the first 2 weeks, and then switch off paid family leave and go on this extended FMLA that's specific to the coronavirus, and then you could get paid the entire 12 weeks.
So that's 3 months. That's 3 months right there. That takes you well into the summer. My gosh, I hope by the time that we get 3 months into the summer, we're back on our feet doing the things we want to do. Jonathan Bell, you sound like a guy that understands all of this. If somebody's interested in getting a hold of you after they heard this, how do they find you?
Very easy number, 855-JOHN-BELL, JONBELL. It's just my name, and you get me directly.
855-JOHN-BELL. You're like those commercials on TV with those lawyers, 1-800-ACCIDENT or something like that.
Well, I try to hold myself above those, but at the same token, I want an easy number so people can remember. That's all.
Well, listen, you have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we appreciate your time here on 700 WLW. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
There you go. Jonathan Bell, 1-800-JOHN-BELL. You ever see these guys on TV?